Mesechus Eruvin daf kuv beis. The Gemara brings the halacha that you're allowed to be moisif on the ohel arai on Shabbos. Hani kipi the arba, you have arches that go over a boat. If there's a tefach in the arch, or if there's less than 3 tefachim between the two arches, then you're allowed to put a machzeles on top of the arches on Shabbos. There's an interesting machlokes Mishnah Berurah and Chazon Ish. Mishnah Berurah writes that if you have within 3 tefachim 2 arches, it's considered lavud. Lavud's considered a stima of more than a tefach, and since you have a oil that's more than a tefach, you're allowed to put the machzeles on the rest of the area as well. It doesn't have to be specifically over these 2 arches that you have lavud. However, the Chazon Ish says no. Chazon Ish says that lavud does not consider the stima, and therefore you could specifically put the machzeles on this area that's closed because of lavud, but it won't be matter to put the machzeles on the rest of the area. And he explains that there's 2 separate halachas over here. There's one halacha, if you have a arch that's a tefach, that's considered the beginning of an oil, and therefore you're allowed to put the machzeles wherever you want. And then there's another halacha, that when you have 2 arches that are close enough within lavud, then you're allowed to put a machzeles over this arch because it's already a haschala because of lavud. And that's specifically in this makom that there has a steam with lavud, you're allowed to put the machzeles on. But you can't learn out from here that when you have lavud, you'll be able to put the machzeles on the rest of the area. And he brings a raya because the Mishnah Berurah be'emes says that this halach of tefach compares it to oil for tumah, and the halacha is in the Eredeya in Siman Shinayin Aleph that for oil for tumah you don't say lavud. So you see that lavud doesn't make a stima. It's tzorich because that halacha in Shinayin Aleph, the Ramah says because lavud lahachmer lo yaminon, it's mashma specific lavud lahachmer lo yaminon. However, the Chazon Ish is understanding that it's mavur over there, that lavud's not considered a stima, so therefore wouldn't be considered a haschala of a tefach. Moving further on, the Gemara says that a vilon, a curtain, you're allowed to put up on Shabbos, and Rashi says that you're putting up the vilon next to the Pesach for tznius, to cover up a doorway, and it's mutter because it's not kavua. The Trumas Hadeshen has a discussion, and what's the halacha if you're allowed to put up a paroiches in front of the Aron Kodesh on Shabbos? And he says in some Mekaymus it was the minig on Yom Kippur before Nilo, they used to change the paroiches. They took down the old paroiches and put up the new paroiches. And the Trumas Hadeshen says that L'daita he would think that it's mutter. He says it's a word in Rashi in Shabbos that it's not an oil, and he says even though you could say Rashi's going l'shitasa that an oil is only on the gag, not on the wall. However, he says even according to Tosis that a wall is considered a oil. He says that's odafka oil amateris mashenkin over here. It's not being matter or anything. It's just tznius. It's okay. But then they asked that Rashi by us is mashma that the reason why a vilon's mutter is only because it's not kavua, but it's mashma. If we would be putting up the vilon on oifen kavua, then it would be aser. And he says you could be matche. Over here Rashi is discussing you're putting up the vilon, you're putting up the curtain for tznius. It would have a status of a doorway, it would have a chashivas of a doorway, so therefore if not for the reason that it's not kavua, it would be a chesaron. However, by the Aron Kodesh that you have, Aron Kodesh has doorways, and the fact that you're putting up a curtain there is just an extra covering, and in such a situation it's mutter. But he says that the poiskim asid it, so he doesn't want to be matter it. Ein the Chazon Ish that asked very strongly on this Trumas Hadeshen, and he says that when you put up a vilon, you put up a curtain on the Aron Kodesh, it should be a chesaron because of boina. Now you're connecting it by even kvat to the wall, it should have a chesaron of boina. Moving further on, Taisus has a very interesting discussion about the shayla of kila. Rashi says it's talking about a bunch of canopies that are less than a tefach, and since there's no gag tefach on on the top of each canopy. So therefore it doesn't have a halacha of oil. Taisus asks, since there's many canopies close together, you should say lavud between the two canopies, and it should be considered like you have a schol of oil tefach. On that Taisus says, a tremendous yisoid, that we say before, it's considered an oil. When you have the kipi close to one another through lavud, that's only in regard that you be able to be matter and be moisif on that oil, because you already have an oil through lavud. But you're not going to say that since you have these two kilos within 3 tefachim of one another, it's considered that you're making an oil and should be also to do it on Shabbos, because it's not mistaver that it should be also to put 2 strings across within 3 tefachim of one another, and that's going to be considered making an oil on Shabbos. As Ein Marsha, they asked a tremendous kash on this Taisus. He says, according to Taisus, they're allowed to put up 2 strings within 3 tefachim of one another, and it's not considered making an oil. So anytime you want to make an oil in the middle of Shabbos, you just start off with making an oil by putting 2 strings within 3 tefachim of one another, and then you have a schola of oil, or that according to Taisus it's mutter, and then you should be able to be moisif, and afterwards put a machzelas on top of it. And every time when you want to make an oil on Shabbos, you have a pashta eight. So you put 2 strings, and then you have a mixes of oil with lavud, and then put a machzelas on top of it. On that, the Beis Meir says that the answer to Mashal's kash, he says, is like kosher midi, because although it's mutter to put 2 strings within 3 tefachim, he says it's not that you're not making any oil, b'chal, you're making a little bit of oil, and since you're making a little bit of oil, just not enough of oil to be osir, so when you come and put machzelas on top of it, it's like you're cooking less than a shemachal by the soy, and then continue a little later, which is for sure osir on Shabbos. So the avon and the machloikis, Mashah and the Beis Meir, I in the Sefer Oil Shmuel, which we explained that the beer in the machloikis is, and what the gather of what that the Taisus is saying over here, that's mutter to put up 2 strings within 3 tefachim, is the pshat that you don't say lavud, to answer you putting up the strings. Well, no, you do say lavud, but even though you say lavud is not going to make it into oil. That the Marsha understands, you don't say lavud, either the pshat is you say lavud lahachma lo yaminon, like Taisus says in Sukkah Daf Yud Zayin, Ayin Taisus Ben Peretz over here is mashma, you don't say lavud lahachmer, or like Rashi's mashma and Sukkah, you don't say lavud when you're not making the mechitzas for this area. And l'das the Marsha, since you don't say lavud, so therefore, when you put up the 2 strings, it's command the lesser domi. There's no connection b'chlal. So therefore, there's no reason to ask you to put the machzelas afterwards. However, the Beis Meir understands you do say lavud. There is a lavud. However, lavud is not enough to ask you for making a oil. Could be similar to the Chazon Ish that we spoke about before, that lavud is not a steamer. So therefore, it is a mixas of a making of an oil, and a mixas of making oil. Then you continue later putting machzelas, it is aser.